you will imagine your house. But I can tell you 100% you can't imagine it, because you will have a feeling of an image, but you can't have actual picture, because the picturization, picturing it is a different medium than the imagination. So you'll have a feeling, मतलब उसका आभास होगा, but they won't be an actual image, because image is always intangible. It's not visible ever. What is visible is actually the shadow it casts, or we create a shadow, or materialize a shadow. But you have been taught that this is an image, or you can, there'll be an image, you'll visualize. It's an impossibility. Then, so we were talking like that, and there was a filmmaker those days called, I don't know if you have ever seen a film called Alan Ranning.
Oh, of course.
Yeah. Okay. So he had stopped making films like Lashin Marinba, then Hiroshima Mona. He has gone into about transparency of filmmaking. Like you're seeing it while it is being made. It's a transparency. It's a process. They don't make an image. They'll say how it is constructed in front of your eyes. There's no illusion.
Right.
So they were the anti-illusionists, a school of filmmaking, developing. Like there were a lot of. It was a new kind of aesthetic which was political. A politics of aesthetics, not party politics, or I like Modi or I don't like Modi. Not that kind of politics. So the aesthetic also has a certain kind of a politics inherent. So they were making a very educational kind of a film. Like he made a film called My Uncle from America. Anybody seen? Huh? You have seen My Uncle? Now that is he's taken a lesson from a biology zoologist or a biologist about the behavior of the rats. Then he compares, the whole text is from that essay on the behavior of the rats, like 3 cages and 3 rats and their interpersonal relationship with the next door neighbors, or this rat, and this rat, and what is the relationship between this and that, or relationship between this central rat. You remember it?
Yes.
And at the same time, he's cutting it with the human relationship. And one aspect in that film is talking about lies. What is lie? How do we begin to lie? What is our first lie in our life? And how does that lie, like triggers off a world, and a make-believe world, or a kind of personality. Even in your childhood, you must have remembered when you first time told a lie in your life. Because the children don't lie. But the first time they lie, they remember that moment, where they go all the way up to tell that lie. Yeah, this is the moment, and it changes their life. That moment of that first lie. You remember? Huh? No?
All truthful.
Huh?
All truthful people, eh?
Thereafter, it has been a series of lies over lies.
But that
One has to excavate.
first lie needs courage, and that's where you give up your innocence. That's the moment when you lose your innocence and you betray yourself also at the same time. So anyway, so talking to the psychoanalyst, so he said, okay, why don't you do something on education? First he said, okay, where does this imagination come from? Basic question. Then the second said, why don't you do something on education? Because Rene was making a series of films on learning and education, about teaching programs, like teachers, their seminar, and they're talking about how do you teach children? How do they recognize? What is that? And I don't know if you've seen this Rene's series on the, teaching training process, the way the teacher will explain children the shape of a cow or shape of an elephant, or they make these clay models. So anyway, so he said, and what is learning? The psychologist friend said, what is the process of learning? How do we learn? Because this friend of mine, this psychologist, those days was going through reading, and he was working with children. So those days there was this one psychologist, very popular and famous, like Jean Piaget. You heard of this?
Yes.
Huh?
Yes,
Psychology.
Huh?
I was a student of psychology.
You read those
The
stages of development.
Yes,
Yeah.
the 5 stages of child development.
Okay, you read those the talking to the children, different age groups, and they'll ask
Yes.
him what is the sun, what is the moon. Huh?
It's cultural. Like you have images in your head
Animistic thinking.
which no one has all. Like a child will know how to react to a fire, for example,
No,
Okay.
not
because it's culturally.
No, not that. There was this another part, animistic thinking, where you teach the child how to associate certain images to things.
Okay.
Animistic thinking. I guess that was called animistic thinking.
And you remember when there's at what age there is a split between the subject and the object?
That was toward the sensory. I don't remember the stage, but that was most probably the third stage. I don't remember the names
Which
of the
month?
stages.
Which month?
So that was after the age of between 10 to 12 or something like that.
No, I think around 6, the first 6 months.
1 year.
See, the whole process ends at the age of 2. And that's a non-verbal age.
Okay.
And after 2, he has to go through the whole process again in the verbal state. So that's the hurdle again in the learning. So he has to go through the whole process. So you'll keep getting these hurdles till you die. So you have to go through the whole same process which you went through from 0 to age of 2. So all your life you will go through the same process with new hurdles introduced into your learning process.
So one example is, like for example, children when they are born, mothers have to reach the room. The child has to realize that she's going to come back.
Yes.
So I think that is what you're saying. We try to repeat this experience repeats with us through our life because the idea that something is left and someone is going to come back is something that we have to keep.
Yeah, and same goes with the process of reversibility.
But you have with this, you ever anybody introduce you with the Bine, W.J. Bine, Memoirs of Future, Long Weekend. What he has done in that, this is relevant to Falke,
Yeah.
not diverting. He's written an autobiographical piece. This Bine, B-I-A-N-O-N. He was India born. Kumar Shani has made a film on him. So he wrote a novel, autobiography called A Long Weekend. So in that, when he's about 2, his sister is about 4 or something. Something happens between them. And there's a separation, they split. There's a separation, they are not one anymore, something, an event happens. Then what it does, that at the age of 4, a similar event happens, which is actually a different mirror of the first event. And similarly, he says 8, 16 and 32. It's a basic event where the sister and the brother separate. Now, there will be transferences into other people. So, that's what he does. He writes a novel called Memoirs of Future. In that, what he does, that he turns this sister and brother into husband and wife. Then the wife has a maid, and the husband has a subordinate. Now some kind of attack happens in their dwelling, and the relationship changes. So the maid becomes the you know mistress, or the power relationship changes, and it is about and how they're coping with this external threat, which is outside of their building or the house. Then he wrote 8 volumes, also on the different aspect of psychoanalysis, where these 4 people they started multiplying, into various characters.
Is he the same guy who was part of Tavistock School and they started therapy groups in London?
He worked in London, then
Yeah.
he shifted to America, and he became the military intelligence hota hai na?
They did lot of work around conditioning,
Yes.
therapy groups, and Okay,
They
now
were mainly in preparing the military
yes.
intelligence. Like Piaget's theory went into application of building computer memory. So the systems they transferred how human memory. Now they are applying it to the artificial, but it's Piaget's model. So these 4 people they start multiplying, and they create a whole universe. And that universe, everything is a character, a zygote, or a sperm, or a Arjun, Lord Krishna, dinosaurs, it's a whole universe, And they have a dialogue, and they're talking about the different problems of psychoanalysis, like what is gaze, what is attention, fantastic, it's a, we dramatize the basic problems of psychoanalysis. So, and it's one event, the first event, the seed. Why I'm talking about this? Because how do you construct a screenplay? Because we use the same kind of a design. It's a design in life or in fiction. So, since I proposed that I wanted to make a fiction film on Falke's life and how I was escaping, Now, like say the Bian, what he did with the autobiographical image, turn that into a novel, then turn it into the universe. You see, it's actually an escape mode. It's something is running away, and at the same time, it's creating a universe into an escape form. Because finally, there is a feel of escape, You are escaping from something, What is that thing? So anyway, back to the psychoanalyst. And he said, okay, you do something on learning. Because we were also in the school where we were anti-illusionists. That we won't create illusion. We hated Tarkovsky, Because I say it's hypnotic. It's mesmerizing, It's the tourism of the consciousness. We were young, I'm sorry, and I apologize. But that was our, I won't connect, I disconnect, We won't create surplus reality. We won't add to this. We are the scavengers, We are the jhaduwalas. We will clean first. So we were giving ourselves these identities, very, very, fashionable identity. We are vacuum cleaners. Like that. That I was still not very old. So anyway, this idea, suited me because I'm not educated. I didn't have a great schooling, or I was too young to study when I was in FTI. And FTI, there was no teaching as such those days in filmmaking. There were no books about screenplay writing, or there were no cinema studies. Dayus hadn't come to India. He got translated in 85 or something. Darida wasn't there. Khan was also not there. La Khan. He used to make fun of it. La Khan, Darida, mein Khan mein phook. So it's a good chance to educate oneself. So I said, okay, on education, so what should I do? So I found one 15-page a biography of Dadasa Phalke. And this is the kind of a biography. Now we're coming to the subject after such a preparation.
Prologue था.
लोग can go
4 उपन्यास बन सकता
हाँ
है.
मतलब उसके लिए समय नहीं 5-6 दिन प्रोलॉग में जा सकते हैं मतलब if I take the first page of this book it can take 2-3 days
Wow.
just the first page तो थोड़ा पानी तो उसमें इस तरह से he is born in 1870 and his name is Dhundiraj Govind Phalke and they are Chitpawan Brahman in Konkanist. इधर कोई है कोंकण?
कोंकण से नहीं, अमरावती से है.
हाँ?
अमरावती से है, कोंकण से नहीं.
कोंकण कोई नहीं है.
इधर से.
Anybody knows about the Chitpawans?
Of course,
Yeah,
of course.
Huh? Okay.
But Chitpawans are, close competition with the GSBs, God Saraswati Brahmins.
Yes.
So we'll not get into that.
Okay, but we can take a थोड़ा सा short journey
Yeah, please.
to Iran and
Yes,
Iraq and Arab
Khorasan,
and,
yeah.
like that. Or
Yeah.
Chitpawans. Some call them Arabs. Anyway, there's a story
Yes.
why they are called Chitpawans and why they are called Phalke. Anyway, we'll go later because I hadn't researched that. The beginning is this much. Then his father is Daji Shastri and I forgot the name at the moment. And he is a Kathavachak. His father is a Kathavachak. He is an astronomer. He is a translator from the Sanskrit to English. He was a professor in either Elphinstone College or Wilson College, 1870. I'm talking about. And he is the high priest of that temple called Jyotirling Trimbakeshwar temple. Then his one uncle is works in railway. He is a homeopath. His brother is secretary to Ramachandra Dutt in Baroda. Ramachandra Dutt was an old ICS officer at the time of Sayaji Rao Maharaja. Then Raja Ravi Verma is about 30 years old when Phalke is 0 year old, 1. Because, like you're saying, suppose there's a Phalke. So there are other timelines
Yes.
in backwards because they're going to meet in future.
Okay.
So, they are existing. They're existing. The whole world is existing. So then, so in Trimbakeshwar, there's this temple. There is a temple Jyotirling, which has a significance that we come to later. Then his father moves to Bombay. He becomes a professor in Elphinstone or somewhere. Phalke studies there, and then he goes to JJ School of Arts. So he learned 3 things in JJ School of, which is tracing, drawing, molding, abstract. Tracing. Just take the word as an abstract word. What is tracing? What is tracing? You trace
A
not
path of something.
Huh?
To repeat the path of something which is already there.
Okay. And in JJ they'll be taught tracing, in different with a tracing paper on a carbon or different means to trace. Then you have drawing. Now drawing is physically you said draw. But what will be the actual meaning of drawing, philosophical meaning? I'm drawing from here. पानी भी निकालते हैं सिंगों से. तो लैंग्वेज में अपन बोलते हैं ना अंदर से बाहर निकाला है. Draw from within. So there'll be a lot of meaning of drawing. Now the mold. Mold will have, because why I'm emphasizing on these terms, because there'll be a lot of technologies will be developed later, which will be based on these terms. Like you said, film, but the film came much later. The word film we were using even in 17th century. A thin film. Like rail. Railway came much later, but the word existed much before the railways came. So the words are much before. That inspired or necessitated a certain technology, to perfect it, to perfect the vision of that word, or materialize it. What I mean, to make a shadow of it, because otherwise the word is not tangible; it's an imagination.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah.
So we will. So they came to Bombay. In Bombay, mein J.J. School of Art, we say, tracing, modeling. Yeah. Then you have Kipling there. So Kipling is a teacher there in J.J. School. You have the whole world there, theatre, whole world in Bombay. Then the father resigns from his job because some Malacha comes into his class. And he makes fun of Phalke's father because he has mastered Sanskrit, this boy, and he's fooling around with the professor, his father, because the language is plastic. From one word, you take his roots, and it can change into any words. Like we say, Krishna is Christ, like that. So you can fool around with language, So this guy has also mastered Sanskrit, and he's arguing with this. So this guy gets insulted, the Phalke's father, and he says, "I am not going to teach this Dev Bhasha to this Malacha," and he resigns and goes back to Trimbakeshwar. Now he tells this boy, Phalke, that you come with me. He says, "No, I don't want to go to the village." So he goes to Baroda with his brother. And there you have this Kala Bhavan. I'm talking about now 1870. So he goes to Baroda in, say, 1890. Baroda mein he learns theatre, music, painting, photography, still photography. And these are the technologies which are very advanced at that time. Because like say, you say Van Gogh is a poor man, but Van Gogh was painting oil paints. The oil paint was the extreme of the technology of that time. The oil paint. So, as he is, going through this process of education, simultaneously these technologies are developing. Now, suppose in Baroda, he's there, he's in the still photography, and the still photography has been just developed, and it has a previous history of box cameras, camera obscuras. You have magic lantern coming in, and you have one frame photography, a rolled camera developing where you can take many frames together. So there is as you now, way he is aging or developing, simultaneously a technology is developing almost parallel to his growth. Sound is developing parallel to his growth. It is almost now imagine that a fetus is developing. So I call it, say, embryology of cinema. Because we, at that moment, we didn't know that digital is going to come, or say you will have these fantastic cameras, or you will have these fantastic recording machines. So you are having a parallel movement, which will later, make it cinematography or make it, like compose it great 3D films, IMAX experiences. And this is how the beginning is, So if you watch the development, it is very interesting, And anyway, so Baroda and backdrop painting. So all the crafts and the arts you need to make a film, he is going through them, through that process of learning. Now today's time, the same, if it took him 30 years to learn all this, maybe today you go to a film school or somewhere, you might get it in 3-4 years time, So Baroda he got that. Then he becomes a still photographer and opens a photography shop in Godhra. Then what happens? A plague spreads in Godhra and people think he is the culprit, because the photography was considered a black magic in those days. So he separates from his wife during the plague. He comes back, he gets married again. He is about 30-year-old. His second wife is 13-year-old. Now, when you have 13-year-old girl and 30-year-old man, it's a different scenario. So I have to keep that in mind if I want to make a film on Falke, what is the relationship then? The first wife and him don't have much difference, they have only 2-year difference, Then from Baroda, he becomes a backdrop painter. Then he has to have a job, so he becomes a draftsman in archaeology. He travels all around the country. Then he gets influenced by the Swadeshi movement. He says, I should have my own business. I shouldn't work for the government. Then he opens a small lithography printing press in Lonavala along with Raja Ravi Verma. Raja Ravi Verma dies. So one rich man sends him to Germany to learn the advanced printing, 3-color process in Yebo. And that's also a high tech. So this man is a, top class technocrat, of his time. He's not, ordinary middle class, lower middle class kind of a person. Then he resigns from this printing job because there's some dispute with the owner, some ideological dispute. He goes blind after this. Then he regains his sight. He sees Christ, life of Christ, and he decides to make a film. He makes film. Then there's a whole process of how he gets the funds. Various means of getting funds together, crowdfunding, paisa funding, all kinds. Then he makes a super hit film called Sri Lanka Dahan. Then he has a big company now and partners. Then he makes Sri Krishna Jan. Then he has a dispute with the partners. He resigns from filmmaking, takes sannyas, and he goes to Banaras in 1920. He writes a 7-hour long play, Rangbhumi, an autobiographical play, and he stages it. It doesn't work. He comes back to the same old company, and he works as a supervisor and makes films. He makes about 108 films. All his children are growing now. He has about 8 children, and children dying. His daughter is giving birth. His wife is also giving birth. Like that. I see his wife all the time pregnant. That's the image I have in mind. Reproduction.
Yeah.
Reproduction.
And 108 films. Yeah. So art.
Yes.
Art बच्चे. Very interesting. Symmetry है इसमें.
So you have to find a pattern. no?
Absolutely, yeah, yeah.
Even if you have to find a pattern.
Yeah.
Without that, nothing works. Even if there is no pattern, you have to create a pattern, or find a pattern and then break it.
Balance.
Huh?
What do you have?
Basic.
Master.
So then he makes a film called Setu Bandhan, which is during when the talkies come. So he makes a silent film. Then suddenly the talkies are come and nobody is buying his film. So he post-sync it, but still is a failure. Then he has to survive. Now he is about 65-year-old. And children are not settled. They are cursing him, like they are uneducated because they never settle down. So, and there is this what vraksh, nothing grows under his.
Shadow.
Then he is still an entrepreneur. Chitpawans are very entrepreneurial. So he does a lot of work like extracting silver from old films, making spaghetti, animal bones, boot polish, and a lot of other small anything to just survive. So then finally Maharaja Kolhapur invites him to make a film in Kolhapur in 1935. So he makes a film called Ganga Avtaran. There, iska kya tha कि always he used to make outdoor sets, huge sets. So he has to shoot Himalayas for Ganga Avtaran. So what he did that he paints the whole mountain range in Kolhapur to make it look like the Himalayas. रात को बारिश आती है and the सारा whitewash limelight goes away and he goes crazy. So he goes crazy for a long. And everything. What is this man doing? Like height of megalomania. And other people are growing. The filmmakers are happy. Children are, like fantasizing about, the stars. The star system has come. Then he is felicitated as a father of Indian cinema, and he's given some money to make a house. Then he still wants to make film, so he's imagined a 3D film, something like that. Then finally he loses his memory. He stopped recognizing people, and then he regains his memory, and so that's now in this 15 pages of his journey. You see so many cities, You see all the arts and crafts that are necessary. You see now. Suppose now I want to make a feature film on this, and I have to study this. So how do I start? There is a Falke factory, you must see it. Now I say, okay, he is born into 1870. So how do I show it in 1870? So what I did a timeline from 1870, 1871, 1872, 1873, 74 years up to 1944. Then we saw some events in his life. Then you see what is happening in technology and what is happening in politics, what is happening in sociology, and all over there's a pattern. Where he is, there's a evolution. So I say, imagine this is still in a fetus. It is not. We suppose we're sitting all year together. Maybe that's not the fully developed stage. Suppose this is in a fetus still. So similarly, the technology, there's an embryology of technology, or there's an aging, that kind of a thing. And with this timeline, suppose there's a 1870, and suppose there's a first child born, say about 1904. So suppose 1904, so Falke will be, say about 1904. So she will be Falke will be 34-year-old. His first son will be 0. Now his second son, at 1908. So the first son will be 4-year-old. This will be 0. Similarly, you will have all the timelines going, and she is also aging, and the children will be repeating each other's age. One is 8, one is 16. So the this 8 is repeating the 16's 8, and you suddenly see it's a matrix. Now matrix is a term which is used for the embryo. Is a mother. The matrix, the root is there, and if you see this matrix, it has a fantastic beauty. But the problem with this matrix is it can never end. So suppose I am working on, say, okay, the father, I have to. So I have to say, okay, he is an Kathavachak. So, okay, 108 Puranic Kathas. Pado. So, Pado. You say, okay, astronomy. Pado. Internet is not available those days, by the way. Internet comes much later. This is the arcade project, Benjamin's. So now it's a fantastic escape for me. Because people will say, what are you doing? You finished nahi kiya abhi tak? Well, no, abhi I'm working on the father, I just finished astronomy, And but at the same time, I am getting an identity. What are you doing? I'm working on Falke. So, and there's a scrapbook which is growing, because I'm working with the scissor, I'm working with the gum, and on my timeline I'm pasting it, and I'm traveling with this. And there's a book which is growing. Like that. Now, this is the process, and there's a concrete something happening because the book is getting made. It's a handbook, It's a crafting a book. And I haven't written it. Even suppose I have a thought, I will be looking for a passage from a book in a library. So I just read some passage and I said, this fits it. So I'll cut it in Caesar and paste it. Because I can't write. This book is made, it's not written. So the father, I could have just been with the father, But then we went to Parshuram, Gautam Rishi, about the Trimbak, but 108, he made all the films later, what he must have heard from his father, because his father is a Kathavachak. Then you come to Bombay, so you will go to say homeopathy. What are you doing? I am studying homeopathy. Indian Railways. So, what happens then? You go out and you come back because you have a subject called Falke. So, just going, like this and coming back, this creates a pulse and it starts resembling the heartbeat. It gives you a outside exterior pulse to your activity because repetition is the main thing, because those days you were reading these ideas about repetition, and they were very big philosophical ideas. So this was the process. Then what happened? Then I said, I have worked on Falke on foot and through libraries, through books, through newspapers, because that past will also once in a while surface in the magazines. A report about an early photographer in Vaitala, suddenly his face will come, I'll cut it in. Because a lot of people are also, are into archaeology of images or history of Bombay, history of Vadodara. So then later, and then I made a documentary on Falke children. There is a couple of children were alive, so I interviewed them. Then I did a comic book with the NID students, based on this scrapbook. In that, what I did is that for 1870 to 1944, so I divided 10 years. There were 10 students, so I gave them about 10 years each. Now they have to make a comic book based on those 10 years that they were given. Now they have to draw it or do anything or any form, but then they have to use the stylization or the art movement of that time. Like suppose somebody is say doing 1880 to 1890. So either he could like use Van Gogh style, or he can use the technology of that time, like say carbon paper, or say maybe Xerox, or say printing technology of that time. So they had to stick to one kind of a style which was representative of that decade, like that. Then now comes finished part. Now comes to Indian Foundation for the Arts. I said I travel on foot, and this project can't be done without a collective. I had a very different kind of an idea about it. And the collective is a very glamorous, very fashionable term these days. We also had a couple of cooperatives, and we were the foot soldiers. Then I said, I must visit all these towns. And we don't have the fiction of that time, in 19th century, 14th century, especially about technology. Is it possible to create stories of that time? And what would the way to do it? At the same time, I had this kind of a idea that there's so much information. I mean, I was holding all that in the one single book, which was growing monstrously. So I said, the stories are a means to store. Means you can condense information into a form of a story, and if you deconstruct it or if you break it, you can retrieve all the information. Or like say a icon, which is a store, and if you deconstruct it, you might retrieve all the historical aspect of the time, or an image, or the social aspect, or the mythical aspects, or maybe something like that. So he proposed to Indian Foundation of Art that I am going to do the 15-day workshops with the local art school or the literate colleges, and we are going to give them the information that we have gathered all these years, and on the basis of that, they can write or invent a story about Falke and his time. So now this was the time. I mean, it was 2006, and the internet had come. So we created a kind of a website called Falke Factory, and in that all the information was put there, and that information was given to all the students. So suppose there's some work happening in Nasik, and if you go next Bombay, so that information from Nasik people can be transferred to the Bombay people through the net, and they were participating in the net. So you have about 300 people who are involved in the Falke Factory kind of a site, and they came out fantastic stories. So we came with working them, we came and we were recording it. So we came around about 9 short films about each city, our working relationship with each other, the students, and the way we gave them the information, and they come with the stories and their search for the research. We were documenting it, and they were becoming a fiction in it. And they were the part of the story they were trying to. It's almost like they were seeking a story, or they were finding a story, or they were searching a story. So the research becomes a story like that. So we did all the cities, but I couldn't go to Rangbhoomi. So what you're going to see today is Rangbhoomi, which is his life in exile in Banaras. So thanks to them, I reached so far. Are we still on the escape mode?
Rangbhoomi is the last part of it.
No, it is, but I couldn't go to Banaras. Last part is in Pune. So we could push up to the push. the why this process and the thing. Why are you making your life difficult? Why can't it be simplified?
It's the psychological impact of the screen.
How? The screen time is a complete new. I mean, if that's complete, I'll be dead. That's my tomorrow.
Tell us something about your work with mythologies. You work with a lot of mythologies, and in the process of researching, you also unearth a lot of mythological references that are not in the usual public domain.
Yeah.
One is to take it.
See, once I realized that what are the political use of the methodology, or because like India is there are a lot of states, but it was still a Rashtra. There was a singular identity. It is because of the polytheism or the mythology. So all these images they negotiate with each other and transform each other in. So this is a flux of identities constantly changing, which creates a kind of a singular image, which is fantastic. So what we talk about in mythologies are not fossilized.
Yeah.
They still are operative in real life, and of course politics. So this negotiation through these images is fantastic. It's like I tell you, like suppose there is a two system, Vaishnavite system and Shaivite system. In Khajuraho you find this temple. So you will have say Shaivite system. So you will have a Parashik, which is not visible, not manifested. So you will have a Sadashiv, which will be a link between the manifest and unmanifested. Sadashiv will have then like other manifestations, means next generation. Will be Shiv, Mahadev, Gora, yeah. Then there will be further. So it will be kind of a grid in a way, a complete family of Shiv's various avtaras or rupas with different gunas in a way. Now this grid can keep growing because they'll have say so father is Sadashiv, son is Mahadev, grandson is Falana. So three names. So there'll be fantastic combination, permutation in this renaming this. And this grid you can impose on a family system, joint families, 10 generations, kingdoms, dynasties. Similarly, like with the Vaishnavites, you'll have the similar kind of a system. And that's why you will find Sadashiv family in say some Bihar, and you'll have a Sadashiv family operating in some Tamil village. And that's how they spread and created a kind of a common identity. Otherwise, they are different. So that's why the mythological language, it's not that you. It's a language by itself, a kind of an intellectual language, which fascinates me. And I know how it is structured, or how it is created. So I apply that and create artificial fictions in a way, just for my pleasure, just for the aesthetic pleasure. Nothing to reflect upon life or, reflect upon my ideas or ideology or alignments or I love Modi, I hate Modi. Just for the aesthetic pleasure.
So, I've always wanted to ask you this, that, when we're talking about all this, we're basically talking about our database of information, right? There's so much of information. And how we see cinema today, like contemporary from what we see when we go to the theater, like very pops. What we see is that the database or the storage of this information in a very narrative way. It is narrativized in a very different way, and we get information over information and we have to solve it. We are put in that kind of position. but you're one of the filmmakers who's also very concerned with the form. I watched Home the Brother, I watched Akli. So, and you're very much concerned with the form, with the way you edit, or whatever it's you're still playing with the cinematic form. So, but you also deal with a lot of information. You also deal with, as you said, like stories and mythologies, and you mix it all up. So how do you just make this connection with form and this load of information that you have? You build a language.
See, I do very mechanically. Like suppose I take information, I keep stuffing it, and I try to. I have 2 hours, and I have to keep stuffing it. I have too much information, and but I have only 2 hours. But I just don't want to say कि yeah, I can't put more data in because 2 घंटे मेरे पास. I put more till it suffocates. And once you keep pushing inside, something has to change. So it will find a structure, or take a shape that it holds everything together. So it's a physical activity, more than a mental activity. That उसको ठोक के to make it solidify. So at one point there's a mutation. और मतलब होता है ना वो धातु बदल जाती है, क्वांटम
quantum physics.
हाँ एकदम वो अलग वो परिधि में चला जाता है, and either it will absorb the energy or leave the energy. So it can be fatal also physically. Because in the end it's a delusion.
Yes.
It's a delusion. So first I have to delude myself. So basically the principle is same. Like तो दूसरा की खोपड़ी पर डंडी मुश्किल है, पहले खुद को बेवकूफ बनाना होगा. So these activities are वो होते हैं ना मैजिक ट्रिक पे कि ऐसा घर पे नहीं करना चाहिए. मतलब these things are not advisable. Correct?
Kamal, you talked about the Chippavan Brahmin trajectory.
We'll take that. We'll take this one.
So two. One is you said you will come back to it. That was about how do we store information. As a general process. The other one which was interesting was about politics. Not about parties or anything, but about the process of writing film, or showing what you know, and how as a filmmaker you have the power. Politics is about power. As a filmmaker you have the power to show something and influence. But also as a filmmaker you are also being influenced by many things. So how do you see that power and you set go?
You can identify your brotherhood, kinship among the artists. Even you are not that great, but I say okay, Alan Rennes would speak. So it's a kinship also, and on another dimension, we aren't from same family or same town or something, but there is some kind of a kinship of consciousness, which has some kind of a liking for each other.
So at what age do you feel that kinship? Because for us, when we're starting out, how do we associate influence that is like good?
It'll for you. I think I believe in the thought is looking for the thinker rather than the thinker is looking for the, because they hunt you down. Like Falke and these guys, they became immortal because they knew their host is going to hunt down people and they will take over the headspaces. So there will be somebody looking for you. If you are worthy of it.
Yeah.
And the second question was about, you said you come back to about how do we store stories.
That's what we've been talking about. All the time. But I think, like, you should see this arcade factory. You go to timeline. There's a book 1, book 2. So there is an information given, and then Hansa, she has transferred that information into some small fiction, And get the picture.
Chittapan Brahmin trajectory.
चित्तान मतलब वो ऐसा बोलते हैं 7 लोग जो है ना समुंदर से धुल के सह्याद्री की चट्टानों के नीचे आए थे। परशुराम ने उनको उठा के चिता पे उसकी अग्नि से उनको शुद्ध करा तो उनमें प्राण आ गए, तो उनको चित्तान।
परशुराम ने प्राण लाए थे राम।
Your obsession with Brahma.
अभी तो ये बिकॉज ऑफ मतलब see, you know, like Vishnu and Shiva are very common. I said, you know, like ये बेचारा के बावड़ा का कुछ कैरेक्टर नहीं लिया, मेरे को कर नहीं सकता। So I hijacked the father as well. Similarly, the you know, like Badmashi I did with the Falke. It's a similar Badmashi like Brahma. This hijacking. And I had a bit of a right also because, you know, like I'm Pushkar is close to Iceland. I live in Ajmer. So, okay. It's very strange, you know, in the Pushkar, Brahma temple is the only place where you can't take the cameras in and there's a security all around it. So Vishnu and Shiv, there's no security.
Seriously?
I don't know why.
वहीं पे पुष्कर में तो पूजा जाता है सर।
हाँ,
Only ten.
एक तो उनके है और साथ में दूसरा जो सिक्योरिटी की तरफ सबसे ज्यादा वो है, दे ओपन अ स्मॉल सिनेमा
पुष्कर में।
जैसे रबायन ये वो बैप्टाइज करते हैं, वो उधर सबसे ज्यादा सिक्योरिटी। हाँ,
I love
बढ़िया जगह,
become a different person.
एक पीसफुल।
और अजमेर में आप दरगाह जाते हैं।
मैं पहले जाता था, मतलब बचपन में तो मतलब कॉलेज से कड़ी मार के और चरस वरस पीने तो वही जाते हैं। चार यारी करके जो कब्रिस्तान है जहाँ सब बांग्लादेशी भी वहीं आते हैं, तो जाके वहीं धूपने जाते थे। अब जाके सिक्योरिटी बहुत हो गई है।
हाँ।
मैं तो दारू पी के घूमता था अंदर, एंड जो सब माफिया वाला आते थे, मतलब ये हम लोग तो साथ में खाए भी हैं, दाऊद भाई दिलीप कुमार एक ही थाली में ऐसा खाना वाना खाए। मतलब एक से क्रिमिनल है वहाँ तो
वहाँ तो क्या कहते हैं, दरगाह में सबके लिए जगह है ना।
सबके लिए,
सबके लिए।
मतलब आप मर्डर करके आ जाओ वहाँ गायब हो जाओ, कोई ढूंढने वाला नहीं, कोई ढूंढना वाला।
वहाँ की जो क्या कहते हैं, वहाँ का जो कानून है कुछ अलग ही कानून है।
अलग हो ख्वाजा साहब,
ख्वाजा साहब,
एम्परर
हाँ
है,
बिल्कुल।
वो तो देश है कि हिंदुस्तान का एक ही राजा है, वो ख्वाजा है।
ख्वाजा मोइनुद्दीन।
But I am doing one fiction, bringing in Dargah and Pushkar called Om the Satellite City. So bringing their mythology together.
मुझे लगा वही चाह रहा था, मुझे लगा कि आप उनसे हैं।
I was going to ask you this. So, how does the place where you are influence how you think and how you
Place is very important because more than the place, it is the landscapes. Say like Pushkar, it's like a 2 million. You're right. Now Ajmer is also like mountains, and then there's no place to go out. So so for me the imagination was the houses are climbing the mountains, you know, and on the top when you come to Taragarh, they are graves. Slowly the houses climb the mountain and they turn to graves. Now this imagery freaks me out. So it gives me some kind of a fiction automatically. Or you must have seen from Ajmer, you see from any point that you have Badapi, that like Panavision kind of a white thing that. For me, it becomes like a Panavision, or a drive-in cinema kind of a thing, where all the people of Ajmer can take out their chairs, sit in the terraces and watch that. So So the landscaping is fantastic because because most of the most of the stories they trigger off mythology. I mean, because they are for me they are like say what you say is yantra kind of things. So that's very important. Like you can do wonders with a well. So that's one very important thing. The landscapes. That's the most. Pushkar, fantastic.
But so different from each other. And I used to
Yeah.
associate Ajmer and Pushkar with people and faith. But it's interesting that you're saying
Like for me, Ajmer, and you go through, you enter into that passage and you enter into Pushkar, which I use in the Pushkar Puran, that opening thing. It becomes like you crossing the threshold and you come into the different world. So I did the same thing when I was working on this novel called Third Policeman, that's Omnia. So I can, they are different world that like, it's like hero journey and you cross the threshold and come into extraordinary world. So for me, Pushkar's extraordinary world can become Ajmer or Ajmer's extraordinary world can become Pushkar. That's why I don't leave Ajmer because Bombay I can't, I can only make a sociological film there. No?
But yes.
और ज़्यादा मल्टी स्टोरी बिल्डिंग फिर गाड़ी आ गई एक्सीडेंट हो गया है ना